Ah, hello there. Seems you've made it. Come and sit down and warm yourself by the fire. It's pretty cold out today. You might need the warmth. And at this time of the year, the veil between the world of the dead and the living is so thin, making it the perfect time to share some spooky stories. So, sit a while and listen while I regale you with a few recitals of the macabre. Let's see. How about we tackle this story first? Have you ever heard about the Japanese festival day Hina Matsuri? It's a day meant to celebrate girls, taking place on March 3rd every year, and alongside a few other festival traditions, you may see a special rite be held called Nagashibina. Here you put paper dolls in baskets of straw and send them downriver as a prayer of health and growth. The idea being that negative forces will be attracted to the dolls instead of the person themselves. Different places might participate in slightly different ways too. One such region near the coast puts their paper dolls into small ceramic bowls and sends them adrift into the sea. The connotations of the rite have changed slightly too, as the bowls often come back to land due to the ferocious nature of the sea during spring. Some locals even believe that the act of the bowls returning brings with them the luck of the sea. There is one obscurity to all of this though. Occasionally, a different kind of bowl might resurface on the beaches. Always, the bowls put out to sea are black lacquered, but now and then, every generation or so, you might see a striped bowl appear, one which was not put out during the Nagashibina rite. Some see these bowls as gifts from some kind of god, though most say to never open these bowls and to let them drift back into the sea. I heard a rumor once of a girl who found one of these bowls on the beach and took it home. It was said she was a quiet sort and didn't go out much, though people remarked that she'd become unusually chipper after finding one of those bowls. Despite this though, they still seldom left their home. Passers-by remarked that their family home smelled sulfuric, salty, more than usual considering the fishing industry surrounding the village. It was as if the smell of fish was concentrated to this single building. It wasn't peculiar that the girl would not leave her home, but the townsfolk became increasingly worried following a longer stint of absence, so a party was sent over to visit one day. The girl, to their surprise, responded quickly at their home's intercom, but something was off. It sounded like she was talking to her mother, but aside from her voice was another, or many, echoing from behind her. Something low and guttural that whispered. As it repeated, there was no response from the girl, and the intercom crackled to signal it had been disconnected. Finding the door unlocked, the townsfolk opened it as they were still worried about the girl. Inside the doorway, where she would have stood, were her waterlogged shoes. Furthermore, the wooden floorboards and paneling that lined the walls and the floor were soaked in water. Mold and damp had set in almost everywhere. Then the party of people saw it. Festering in the corners, the ceilings, any small nook and cranny were fish eggs. The deeper the townsfolk went, the more they found, teeming in corners, stuck to walls in viscous clumps. They climbed the stairs to the second story and approached one of the bedrooms where a faint noise could be heard. A low, quiet gurgling. Not knowing what to expect, one of the townsfolk, expressing concern for the girl, turned the door's handle and entered the room. Inside was the girl, convulsing, stuck to the wall of the room, covered in fish eggs, as if she was being used as a receptacle for their birth. The townsfolk managed to get her out of the house and to a doctor. The fish eggs were cleared out, but something bothered people. The way she talked after finding the striped bowl, or rather, who she would talk to or about. She would mention her mother and sister. Just as she had at the intercom that day, the townsfolk found her. However, both her mother and sister had drowned at sea a mere month earlier. Perhaps this was a strange coping mechanism or reaction to the grief the girl had to endure, though the residents of this town all point to one thing: the striped bowl which she never should have opened. The sea is full of unknowns. What's contained in its depths are one of the greatest mysteries of our earth. Be careful what you pick up from the sea. Perhaps whatever it spat out is best thrown back in. Now that I've read the first story, let me tell you how this video will work. I'll be yapping about 5 manga today, and at first I'll present you with a spooky snippet to ground you in the horror of each work, and after I'll dig into the series in a bit more detail like I usually would. I'll avoid major spoilers, but give a general impression on each work, who made it, what kind of horror it delves into, that kind of thing. If, however, you like the sound of each story as I've presented them initially as a campfire horror story, and want to go in as blind as possible, please use the timestamps in the description to jump around to whatever story or review portions you'd like. Either way, I hope you find something spooky to read, and for now let's delve into the work I just covered, Nikubami Honegishimi, a bit more. Created by Paragoric, Nikubami Honegishimi, or Tearing Flesh, Grinding Bone, is a 2023 horror manga that's still ongoing and is being serialized in the online publication Kurage Bunch. What I just read to you is an adaptation of a single storyline. I trimmed the fat and some elements to make it come off as more of a rumor, so should you read it in its entirety, there's more to it, but the general vibe, ideas, and atmosphere are all there. I felt it would be a good series to start with, as not many people have read it, and due to its anthology nature, it's easy to jump in and out of individual stories, but it still has an overarching plot, mystery, and characters you can care about. It's pretty fitting for this video and the way I'm presenting things too, as it likes to toy and dwell in superstitious and supernatural rumors, seeing its protagonists seek them out to see if they're true or not. Its influences are firmly rooted in Japanese mythology, as I've illustrated through this tale I just told. You'll see nods to different folklore or traditions, but it often interweaves these with each other or adds in what I can only describe as a cosmic horror element, which makes them feel like classic folktales with a fresh spin. There's also a pervasive sense of dread to the series, that the characters are often interacting with something much bigger than themselves, and without fail they barely scrape by. The horror here comes from the intersection of the unknown, but also knowing just enough about a given thing to know it's best not to look. Of course, something that aids this aspect incredibly is its artwork. It's messy, inky, characters have cartoony distinguished features, huge eyes, noses. The style is distinct and in some instances really cute in a slightly off-putting way. One of the characters, Inubosaki, is especially endearing and appealing. She's a joy to watch and approaches the supernatural aspects of the series with a level of whimsy as a journalist for an occult horror magazine. Meanwhile, her older partner Azuma is quieter, jaded, and doesn't want to mess with the supernatural despite his sensory gifts and connections to them. To contrast these simpler, cute character designs, you then get what they're up against, be they supernatural or otherworldly. They all exude creepiness, a croaking, visceral level of evil. Visually, the series is a treat, and my favourite manga often have one thing in common. There's nothing else that looks quite like them, and in this case, that holds very strong here. The series has been ongoing for about 2 years now, and due to the nature of it being in large part an anthology, there's plenty of spooky short stories that have been finished here. The fan translation is also excellent at providing some context about certain folklore, it reads well, and also the lettering is pretty snazzy too. A lot of effort has been put in here, so I'd love to at least put a few more eyes on it. For a newer horror manga, I feel it really doesn't get better than this, and I heartily recommend you check it out if you want a well-rounded horror manga. Now, how about we return to the campfire and I'll run through another spooky short story. This next one might seem a bit obtuse. It's less a story I've heard from someone else and more of an observation of something odd I received in the mail once. Just a slip of paper, a house floor plan, but I promise it's as chilling as the last story. Say, how familiar are you with your home? The house or building you live in? What about where you work or the homes of your friends or relatives? By chance, do you ever stop and think about the layouts of the rooms, how things are spaced or constructed? Have you even seen a floor plan of where you live? How about we look at one here? Take your time, look over it, both floors, every room. Do you notice anything odd or out of place? It's a home designed for a family of 3, though there are 3 bedrooms, with one being spare on the ground floor. It has a decent amount of space, a garage, a balcony, but the more you look at this floor plan, the more you might notice how wrong things are, and a good few things might stick out to you. The split bathrooms and toilets are one. It's not uncommon to have more than one in a house, but having 2 washrooms and only 1 toilet, all separate upstairs, is odd to say the least. There's also this little space in the kitchen that's not all that odd, but it's been filled in. Perhaps it's for structural reasons, though it certainly stands out. If you've been especially observant, though, you might notice the creepiest thing about this house: the children's bedroom. There's something very wrong about it. Firstly, to get into the room, you must first enter the master bedroom, then go through a short corridor, and all in all, the child's bedroom is separated by 3 doors to the stairs. And most frighteningly, this room has no windows. It's completely locked off from the outside world and possesses no natural light. One of the 2 toilets in the household is also located in this small bedroom complex, a baffling choice. It's almost as if this room is a cell. Nobody can look in or out. The only entrance is behind 2 doors, as if to keep something or someone inside. It is the definition of bizarre. Perhaps there is a reasonable explanation as to why the house has been laid out this way. Something entirely normal, but when you add the fact that not far away, in a nearby wood, the dismembered parts of a corpse were uncovered, it tends to make your mind wonder. What else might this house be hiding? What was it used for? Perhaps it's best to stay clear of this one and look for another place to live. This excerpt is a snippet from the manga The Strange House, another ongoing series from the web manga site Comic Howl. It's been illustrated by Kyo Ayano and is based on some novels by author Uketsu. The series delves into houses, homes, buildings, and their layouts. Through this, it shows that floor plans on their own are capable of telling stories, providing you with clues to greater mysteries, or are just able to convey a sense of horror. Sometimes the most mundane things in our lives which we don't spend a minute to think about can be made scary through context, framing, or overthinking. The Strange House, through excellent pacing, enraptures you into its world. It provides you with the floor plan immediately and asks you the question, is there anything wrong with this? It ignites your mind, your imagination, and you start to wonder what they mean by that. And alongside its characters, you start piecing together the mystery of why this house has been built the way it has. It's a great exhibition of the horror of liminality, as you're quite literally examining the in-betweens of houses, where the walls intersect, how rooms are spaced out. Things you wouldn't usually question. It makes you think about what's behind everything. Are the measurements of walls correct? Is there any space for a secret room here or here? After reading The Strange House, I went around my own home looking at its walls, thinking about where the rooms intersect, and I'm pretty sure everything is fine. But there is this nagging feeling sometimes that the measurements don't quite add up. Could there be a little more space I'm not accounting for? If taken to the extreme, this could be maddening. Imagine measuring your own house, and then what if you found out your suspicions are right? That would be terrifying. The concept is so simple, but it's also infectious and brilliant because it's applicable to everyone pretty much. And God forbid you live in an apartment complex or something, because who knows if the other apartments are as big as they should be. There could be a secret room behind you and your neighbor where they're watching you or something crazy. Sorry if that idea makes you paranoid. The Strange House definitely teaches on having a more mysterious tone. It methodically goes through its concept too, and while it's quite unnerving, there's a relaxing vibe to it as well. It's slower, the danger is hypothetical, for the most part it's calm, but it's the kind of thing where you might feel like looking over your shoulder every now and again while reading, or just staring at the corner of your room or walls with suspicion. The artwork is also robust, it's clean, especially compared to Nikubami Honegishimi, which makes sense as architectural elements are the primary focus, and architectural illustration, I feel, is known for its clean, straightforward lines. It can pull out more creepier illustrations when it needs to though, and its characters are appealing, which is important as the manga is full of dialogue, as it's mostly people talking about floor plans and houses. It's kind of ingenious how it makes such a basic and kind of boring concept on paper extremely engaging. If any of this sounds at all interesting, I heavily recommend giving this one a read, as it explains things in a much more enrapturing way than I have and goes into a lot more depth, with more to come as the series is still being published too. It even has an English physical release by 7 Seas if you'd like the book tangibly in your hands. Now then, let's move onwards to our next story. On the subject of floor plans and houses, this reminds me of something from my own home, during the time when I started making videos for YouTube. You see, when I started out, everything was fine. It was peaceful and calm. I'd slowly learn how to edit, how to record things, and over time, more and more people began watching. I enjoyed making videos on the topics I loved. I was having fun, and others seemed to appreciate my work. But one day, I noticed something odd in my room. A hole had appeared. Something small, about the width of your average pencil, perhaps slightly bigger. I was confused at first. Why had something just appeared there suddenly? Perhaps someone dug a hole for some reason while I was away, but naturally, I covered it up and forgot about it. Only for it to reopen several days later, and furthermore, and this was equally as bizarre, some money had seemingly spilled out of the hole, a rolled up banknote. Time went on. I'd cover up the hole again, and about a month later, it opened up with more money gracing my floor. I found this odd, but of course, welcome. Perhaps it was just a prank by someone, I thought, but shortly after, more and more holes popped up in the room, and more money piled onto the floor. They began to pepper my walls, and the money came trickling in. It seemed fine, though. Isn't this a good thing? But one night, when things were especially dark during winter, I turned on a small sidelight by my desk as I was working on a video, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something reflective and unusual. It was one of the holes, or what was inside of one of them. So I took a closer look and shined my phone's torchlight down one to get a better look, and what I saw was a human eye. I recoiled back and plugged up the hole, but that's when I realized all the holes that covered my walls, my ceilings, they were looking back on me. And if you too would like to be one of the onlookers just like in this tale, then you can head over to my Patreon. Real talk, the only reason I can make videos as frequently as I have with as much effort as I have been putting into them is because of the many people supporting me like this through Patreon. I thought I'd take the time to thank everyone in the middle of the video for once to draw attention to the Patreon since I put more effort into this video than usual. Thanks a ton for your support, all of you, genuinely. And if you're interested in the Patreon, there will be a link in the description, and I'll go over it in greater detail when I thank all of the patrons individually at the end of the video. But for now, I've taken up too much of your spooky time with Patreon yapping, so let's get on to our actual third story. Let's start this next tale with a question. Do you recall your first kiss? Perhaps you're still with that person you shared it with, or you simply don't remember. Maybe it hasn't happened yet, or maybe it happened when you were very young. Back where I used to grow up, there was a big house with a dazzling garden which nearby children would play in, and at its very center was a single large rock. In the summer it would be warmed by the sun, and children would flock to it, sitting on it, playing around it, using it in their games. Once, as a child, I went to the garden alone, and none of my usual friends had arrived yet. The owner of the house, a kindly old man, wasn't anywhere to be seen either. Their home was empty. Something then compelled me to turn to the garden, to the rock in its center. Something about it that day seemed special. It seemed more radiant than usual, despite looking exactly the same. So I ran on over to it, the sun beating down on me. I touched the rock and felt compelled to place my lips on it. Its heat seeped into me, and I felt as if I was becoming one with the rock. I was filled with an overwhelming sense of warmth. But then, as I pondered the rock and the heat it exuded, a cold chill ran through me. The world was suddenly enveloped in sound, as if I had just awoken from a dream. There was a crunch from behind, and standing there was the owner of the house, upright, rigidly, with a toothy grin, unmoving. And then, suddenly, he walked close, hand extended, ready to grab me. My heart leapt out of my chest, and in a panic I ran and ran, but he didn't chase after me. He just waited there by the rock, grinning. After that, I never went back to the garden or that rock, and eventually I moved away. But years later, after I had my first kiss, my first real kiss, with an actual person, I put my fingers to my lips and was consumed with disappointment. I remembered how that rock felt in that instant, its warmth, and then I longed to go back. This story comes from one of the newer Jump Plus manga, The Darkest Corner of the Heart by Amayo Yuho from 2025. This retelling is the most word-for-word type excerpt, since the series is about the concept of relaying short spooky stories itself. Here, a group of different artists gather on Discord to chat and share spooky stories, which they come up with together. There's a discussion on what it means to be an artist here, on how we convey stories and what we get out of them. You could even point to me reading this work as a major inspiration for this video, as it made me think about how we present horror. I thought that instead of a usual analysis or recommendation, let's try to capture the spirit of these works, some level of their essence, in the hopes that it might appeal to anyone watching enough to check them out. The story I opted to cover too is the very first chapter of the series, which I was a bit hesitant to do, but I love it so much that I ended up eventually landing on it as my story of choice, and I'll let you know why. I think it's the best example of Darkest Corners of the Heart's tone, and the story itself really surprised me on a first read. It's creepy, lulling, and oddly sensual. It has a focus on building atmosphere and conveying senses, like how it references the heat of the rock multiple times. The series exhibits a kind of horror which isn't as overt as Nikubami, but it's not as dry as The Strange House. These are modern-day campfire stories tinged in the digital era with a focus on being a bit cozy. Darkest Corner of the Heart attempts to meld horror with a more contemplative, therapeutic element, to balance its eeriness with a gentleness. I don't think this will click with everyone, but I admire that it's attempting to do something different, and I think it does land for me. It's a bit spooky, but it's also intimate, and it's discussing some worthwhile elements behind the scenes which I'll leave you to delve into if you find my description interesting. This one is also by far the most accessible, I think, as it can be read for free on the Manga Plus app officially. For this next story, I'm going to talk about an event that happened a few years ago. It was regarding an odd series of text messages and emails sent to people. These messages all started with the subject heading, down, D, OWN, all capitalized. And then the message itself was always some kind of body part, a singular word. Many people wrote this off as a silly rumor or prank and paid no heed to these messages, but the next morning after they awoke, something would be missing from them. From one woman who received a down mail, the message read, toes, and perfectly severed with no blood loss, they were absent from her feet that morning. Rushed to the hospital, the doctors looked over her but determined she was fine. Her toes were just now absent. In the same time frame, multiple other reports were collated, individuals who had received messages with the subject heading down, nose, eyes, with these body parts disappearing from the recipients. The police didn't know what to do. There was no trace of other individuals committing this crime physically, and the victims showed no signs that they themselves had committed these actions. It was like these body parts just vanished, either into thin air, or perhaps to somewhere else. The sender of the mails couldn't be tracked, and ultimately the down case, as it came to be known, went cold. But if it ever resurfaced, especially in our modern age where phones and computers are so ubiquitous, who knows what could happen.
You got mail.
So for one of the manga I wanted to recommend today, I wanted to pick a shoujo series. There's a huge history of shoujo being intertwined with horror, which has been a lot of fun to look into in all honesty, and I've barely scratched the surface of what the demographic and its history has to offer. This excerpt is relatively short since I wanted it to act as a hook for anybody curious about this next manga, Moto Ikitai, or I Want to Live On. It's a short 2-volume work by author Yoshi and artist Yuki Ando, which debuted in 2004 in Margaret. It's a story steeped in tragedy that uses modern technological advancements of the time to tell a different kind of horror story. It very much feels grounded in the early 2000s, and I think that adds to its bleaker vibe. It actually reminds me of some Japanese movies from the period. It does have a kind of weird, almost Ringu or One Last Call from Takashi Miike vibe. If you've ever seen that, I get those feelings from reading it. The story also goes to some wild places involving missing body parts and creepy emails like I just mentioned, but also it has a lot of Christian imagery, including a character claiming to be Jesus. I won't claim it to be the most well put together work, but there's a lot to chew on despite its shorter length, and I think it's worth experiencing for the novelty of the work alone. Its artwork is also quite beautiful. There's an uncanniness to its characters and expressions. It certainly feels like a horror manga, but enough has been done through the use of screen tones and page composition to separate it from every other manga on today's list. At the risk of stereotyping demographic styles, it feels like a warped shoujo manga through its visuals. Hopefully my description of it, as brief as it was, conveyed to you that there is something interesting here worth checking out. And for our last tale, just as we began by putting something out to sea, we shall see the ocean return something to us. A message in a bottle. Its contents detail a family gathering, one that took place between the dates of October 4th and 5th of 1986 on an island off the coast of Japan called Rokkenjima. Every year the owners of this island, the wealthy Ushiromiya family, gather. As for why, perhaps it's a simple family get-together, though many speculate it's a way for the patriarch Kinzo Ushiromiya to take tabs on his progeny and to help him decide who will receive his inheritance and become the next family head. Rumors circle the island and the Ushiromiya family like seagulls over discarded scraps, but only a scant few people have ever stepped foot on the island itself, and perhaps that's for the best. While it was out of the way for most people, over time the island gained more and more notoriety, in large part due to this bottle message that was found a few years after the dates logged inside. The bottle contained a wad of pages, epistolary accounts like a journal of the events that occurred on October 4th and 5th from the youngest present on the island, Maria Ushiromiya. It detailed the boat ride to the island, the fact that a long-time absent grandchild of the family, Battler, had finally returned to the main family and had opted to join this family reunion. The gathering would be interrupted, however, firstly by a typhoon that came their way, ripping out communications with the outside world and preventing anyone from leaving by boat. For a time, things are documented to have gone as normal. The family chatted, had dinner together, and the subject of a certain painting was brought up. A looming visage of a woman adorned in a beautiful dress, her hair glistening like gold. This portrait was of Beatrice, a supposed witch that the patriarch Kinzo was familiar with. Below this painting, carved in stone, was an epitaph which became increasingly relevant as the night progressed. The epitaph was repeated in the notes, and it reads thus: "Behold the Sweetfish River running through my beloved hometown. If you seek the Golden Land, follow the river and seek the key. Downstream, you will find a village. In this village, seek the shore of which two will speak. There the key to the Golden Land sleeps. Whoever so finds the key should follow these directions to the Golden Land. On the first night, offer up as sacrifices the 6 the key chooses. On the second night, those who remain will tear apart the 2 who are close. On the third night, those who remain will praise my noble name. On the fourth night, gouge the head and kill. On the fifth night, gouge the chest and kill. On the sixth night, gouge the belly and kill. On the seventh night, gouge the knee and kill. On the eighth night, gouge the foot and kill. On the ninth night, the witch will revive, and none shall be left alive. On the 10th night, the journey will end, and you shall reach the capital in which the gold dwells. The witch will praise the wise and bestow 4 treasures. One shall be all the gold in the Golden Land. One shall be the resurrection of the souls of all the dead. One shall be the resurrection of love lost. One shall be the witch put into an eternal sleep. Rest in peace, my beloved witch, Beatrice." The family largely dismissed the painting and epitaph as one of Kinzo's peculiarities, being a rich and lonely old man who indulged in various fancies, including so-called black magic. But once gathered together later on at the dinner table, people began to waver whether Kinzo's tales of the witch were real or not. A letter signed by the witch Beatrice was presented before them that night, compelling them to solve the epitaph, as doing so would grant the one who solved it the family's entire fortune, a mountain of gold, as well as the title of Ushiromiya family head. The letter had initiated a hunt for the witch's gold. It turned an otherwise quiet family get-together into a nail-biting race. But as the message in the bottle documents, it turned bloody fast. The following day, rain poured down, and the faceless remains of 6 individuals were found in the garden shed. Its door was adorned with a bizarre ritual circle, painted in blood. As the day went onward, more and more bizarre and unexplainable murders occurred, which could be linked back to the epitaph. The 6 sacrifices, the 6 murders in the shed. The remaining family was trapped on the island with a mass murderer. I won't regale you with the horrors that occurred to the others on the island, but if the bottle can be believed, everyone remaining after the slaughter was taken to the Golden Land the epitaph mentions by the witch Beatrice. After the event, the police managed to find several dead bodies, but a number of the 18 original people present on the island were missing, namely all the children. They have never resurfaced since. Years later, the message in the bottle would resurface, spreading the tale of the witch Beatrice and the events of the Rokkenjima massacre even further. Rumors would spread and shift, and a considerable amount of eyes flickered back to this now lonely island. To this day, nobody knows what truly happened on the island. Nobody knows who exactly died, how they did or why, or how much involvement this witch really had. Though the bottle letter comes to a close with a message from Maria. If you are reading this, then I am most likely dead. Perhaps I have left a body, or perhaps not. To you, the reader, please find the truth. That is my only request. Maria Ushiromiya. And that is my last story, an adapted snippet from Umineko When They Cry, by far the most well-known thing on this list. Umineko originates from a visual novel series by the very well-regarded Ryukishi 07, who has also done Higurashi, which is even more well-known. Of course, I'm talking about Umineko's manga adaptation here though, since this is a video about horror manga on a channel devoted to that particular medium. If visual novels are your thing, totally check out Umineko in that form. I'm not going to stop you, but I am here to recommend to you the manga. As someone who has read it all, I think it's absolutely brilliant, and while I'm sure it misses some smaller nuance, it's a rich tale, still totaling its 60 total volumes when you add up its 8 parts, and the artwork is spectacular as well as varied as different artists illustrated different parts. The work on display in this section is from the first book, Legend of the Golden Witch, which has been done by Kei Natsumi. I really adore how they illustrate faces in particular. They have a great range, and they nail any scene that's more horror focused, which I think is very appropriate for this video. Umineko is this story I really want to talk about and recommend to people, but it's a bit difficult due to its length and also its story, as letting almost anything slip, I feel, has the chance to potentially ruin things. It's a very mysterious work that gets better and better as it goes on, so hooking you with this snippet of what it's about initially is my goal here. I've tried to give a cryptic but interesting outline of some of the goings on within the story, hints of what's there, an isolated island, a rich family battling for gold and inheritance, and an enigmatic witch who may or may not exist. Usually the series is touted to be more of a mystery work, and it's full of mysteries, but there's also plenty of blood-curdling horror to be found. The amount of dread and unease that it instilled within me upon my first reading was really palpable, especially in this first book when you don't know what's going on. Umineko is great at making you feel lost and insignificant. You're always at the whims of its storytelling, despite potentially trying to figure out the mysteries it's laid before you. It's a work I adore a great deal, and without going into specifics, it's one of my favourite stories period. It's a piece of art that has changed me in some profound ways, but even if it doesn't do the same things it did for me as it does to you, it's still a remarkable work that intertwines mystery and horror that I believe everyone should give a go. For how vocal its fans are and how known it is, I feel like more people still need to experience it. I also need to be able to talk about it with more people because it's such a special and rich work. The first part is only 4 volumes long, and I feel like there's a lot of breathing room to be had if you want to split it up part by part, a bit like JoJo, I guess. But if it is your thing and you enjoy what you read from A Legend of the Golden Witch, the 8 parts in total add up to 60 volumes. I'm repeating this because it's a big commitment, but I promise it's definitely worth it to read it in its entirety. It's an epic for sure, and I think its length leads to such a vibrant and full story that features characters so complicated you'll be thinking about them for the rest of your life. This is all available officially in English too, with a physical version, though that might be a tad hard to find depending on where you get your manga from, and I'm not familiar if it's been reprinted or not either. And a few more final pieces of advice. If you really get into Umineko, I recommend you try to solve it like a mystery. This is a video focused on horror, but I am a huge mystery nut, and Umineko is begging you to be solved, just as Maria Ushiromiya mentions in her letter in The Message in the Bottle. I also think you should check out Umineko's soundtrack from the visual novel if you read the manga or not. The music is amazing, but putting it on while you're reading the manga, at least it elevated the experience for me, so I would hope it does for you as well. Hold on though, as we're not quite done here. Alongside the 5 main manga I wanted to recommend today, I also have some bonus manga recommendations that I didn't feel quite fit into this format, but wanted to throw your way anyway. So as a present for watching all this way, here's some extra spookiness for you. Firstly, I really wanted to sneak a Suehiro Maruo manga onto this list. He's an artist I've been enjoying a great deal recently, and while his works won't appeal to everyone because there's a high level of gore and sexual violence on display, I think The Strange Tale of Panorama Island, his adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's novel of the same name, is totally worth a read. It's not too intense like some of his other work, and it balances its horror with a majesty that's really captivating. It's only a single volume long too, so like most things I've mentioned in this video, it's a nice quick read that doesn't overstay its welcome. Speaking of works that push boundaries, I did think about including Brad Harley's Coach, or Blood Harley's Coach, by Hiroaki Samura, but I think it's safe to say it won't appeal to most people. I do think it has a very valid and interesting portrayal of horror though. It depicts a guttural evil that could only come from a human source. It's us at our very worst, most animalistic but also most human. The events are all tied to our institutions, how we govern, how we police, and how we treat women specifically. Without beating around the bush too much, the level of sexual violence on display is harrowing, and it's something that made me feel genuine emotional pain. But in that, I think there's something valuable and kind of beautiful, in that very real human horror and how you can empathize with its characters who undergo some extremely painful and horrible things. I don't recommend this lightly, but I would be lying if I told you I didn't want anybody to read it. Just know what you're getting into beforehand and know what your limits might be. For something on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Furo Kyodai, a shoujo horror comedy, which I thought might be fun to include because it's so atypical and isn't necessarily what you think of when you bring up horror. I like horror comedies a lot though. There's often a fun balance that leads to introspective humor through pointing out what we are afraid of. It's like sweet and spicy food, a combination many people do enjoy but don't necessarily think about all that much. The general premise is about these two morose-looking twins who always do everything together. It's cute and it's only 1 volume long, just like the last 2 recommendations. Kaidan to Odoro, Societe Anata wa Kaidan de Odoru is another 1 volume work, and I was debating whether or not to include this on the list of 5 due to it being written by Ryukishio 7, the creator of Umineko, but then I thought about it a bit more and realized I really wanted to talk about Umineko even in a limited capacity, so this got the short end of the stick. It's a neat little story following a group of kids in middle school, and it delves into the power of rumors. If you want something a bit drier, woodier, but still a complete story in a compact form, this is a nice little read. School Ningyo is something I read earlier within the year on a whim, and it's 5 volumes in total, following the concept of a rumor that if you go to school at night and hunt down a mermaid with the correct letter of your crush and eat it, your crush will fall in love with you. I won't say anything more, but it's quirky and creepy in a very fun way that I feel anime and manga can only be. And finally, for another ongoing manga with more of an action focus, I think the Nito Exorcists is really cool. On the surface, it's your usual exorcism manga. Dull, unemotive boy, their friend who always wears a bunny suit, killing oddly cute blobby monsters with katanas, with super expressive experimental page and panel compositions. Wait a sec, this is rad as hell! The Nito Exorcists takes something you're familiar with and ups its level of individuality. It's so much fun, but also kind of raw with how emotionally vulnerable its protagonists are, and the art I can't praise enough. It plays around with its own style and wraps that around in-universe, with the less detailed enemies being weaker and the more detail you have meaning you're a stronger entity. I have no idea what this could mean for some of the human characters who bounce around between the cutest, silliest little blobs in comedy sections to beautifully sketched melancholic portraits. Soul oozes from this, and it's been a joy to read, but due to its action focus, it doesn't really lend itself to be adapted in the same way as the main 5 I covered today. From this bonus section, you can take more than just recommendations out of this, I feel. Horror, like any genre and any medium, is very broad. There's a lot of different things to explore and experience, a whole host of stories that can't really be adapted easily anyway into a campfire story-like format. And equally, there's a lot more out there than just the popular stuff. I tried to showcase a mix of stories today from different years with different paired genres or vibes, different art styles too, and I also tried to shove in a lot of series that hadn't been read as much, be they newer or older works. Beyond everything I've discussed today, I hope I put you into a spooky mood, and you found something here to read and enjoy, and if not, then I'm sorry I failed you, but I hope you had a decent time listening to my recountings of these stories, and feel free to share your own horror manga recommendations in the comments. I'm always down to read more. If you'd like more videos on horror manga, a few months back I did do another larger video on some old vampire manga, which is one of my personal favourite videos, so it's something I heavily recommend. For non-horror related stuff, I most frequently talk about the manga from Weekly Shonen Jump, either in a historical context through my History of Shonen Jump series, where I run through the magazine year by year, or through my X-Files. In these videos, I take a look at some of the cancelled works from Weekly Shonen Jump. I evaluate and discuss them and attempt to give them some more love, as often these are underlooked due to the nature of them being cancelled. If any of that sounds like fun, please check them out and subscribe for more manga related videos. As I alluded to earlier in the bonus spooky story about the holes in the walls, I do have a Patreon, which is very important as it's helped keep the channel afloat. You can support me for as little as $1 a month, and for that, alongside helping me out, you'll also get access to some bonus videos, one of which is a pretty decently edited venture into the SCP universe, a field full of internet horror stories. You'll also get access to some exclusive polls, and your name read out in the credits. For any tier that's $3 or more, you'll also get a little doodle to accompany your name in the credits too, like all of these cool people. Thank you so much, Trinity, Jade, Kaizoku Gairu, Soroquel Zero, Holly the Apothecary, Mayu, It's Fako, Yellowtail, Lace Loggett, Crispy Bacon, Chohenshin, Full Metal, Unquestionable, Yozakura Psycho, Wurzel, Violent, Cactus, Joni, City Name E, Vino Burrito, Caffeine Dad, Cryonaut, Crash, 41IZ, Hong, Jamie Reynolds, Manu, Pokey Emblem, James Miller, Jopa Monkey, Just a Virus, Star Sphinx, PK Broly, Fenrir Black, Elijah Espinoza, Neo-Humanoid, Mark Nielsen, Electropirate, Jay Vasso, Three Frogs in a Trench Coat, Sir Flash, Gay Shark, Slimy Okra, Giddista, Wavy Sky, TG Talks Manga, John Jerry 722, Andrew, Zenomat, Miskell, Tara Elizabeth, Hilltop, Vaco Draws, Otaku Gamer X, Deadpan, Shy Monkeys, Jonathan Dragonet, John Sanford, Color, Jaime, Strawberry Pressione, Baz, Palette, Ruina, Juice, Kuromi Nox, Eric Gorski, Mr. Shira, Grizz Exploder, Dextora, Ennio Showo, Cheese, Emmy, Benjamin, Joshua, and Tai Fumi Studios. Thank you all so much for being patrons. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind and take care.